Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today we are going to be doing another end of the year video, and one of my favorites to discuss because we're going to talk about my 2021 most anticipated book releases. I absolutely love doing this video, and this is obviously only the second time I'm doing it, but I'm obsessed and I absolutely love to share my excitement with other people about what books are coming out and what ones I really want to read. So without further ado, let's just jump into the list. The first book that I'm excited for 2021 comes out on January 5th, and that is Lore by Alexander Bracken. This book is essentially a story about gods that are trapped in our world and have to complete a task in order to reclaim what was once theirs. It's set in New York City, and the cover has Medusa on it, and I'm here for it. I've never read any Alexander Bracken books before. I do own the Passage series actually, but I just never got around to reading it. I mostly probably because it's on my Kindle and not an actual physical book, but I don't really know much about her. However, anytime you have Greek mythology in a book, I'm here for it. So I don't really know much more about the premise other than there is the main character I think is being punished for fleeing this type of environment, when the gods were walking the earth, she fled, I think. It sounds really cool and I'm here for it. The next book that comes out in January is the 6th book for the Wayward Children series by Mcguire, which is Across the Green Grass Fields, and that comes out on January 12th. This is a continuation of a series, but also it's kind of one of those series where some books you can just read out of order or any order. Other books you really need to kind of pay attention to order, and I just personally like to read them in order because that's how I started. But this series is pretty big on YouTube. If you watch any booktubers, a lot of them include this in their list. And this one, I believe, takes place in a pony lover's world. So you have creatures that are like ponies and centaurs and unicorns. And the girl who ends up going into this land is obsessed with them. That's all I know. And I only know that because Books with Emily Fox talked about it on her channel a little bit. But I don't really care. At this point, I'm hooked into the series. They're mostly 4 and 5 star reads for me. I love the magic. I love the representation because there's so many great representations in this series. And I believe the main character of this coming book, number 6, is intersex. And personally, I don't think I've ever read an intersex character. So I'm kind of excited. Also on January 12th is The Conjurer by Luann G. Smith. This is the 3rd and I believe final book in the Vine Witch series by the author. The Vine Witch was one of my top favorite books of last year, and I also read the 2nd book, which was The Glamourist. Both of these books follow different types of witches in this world. I believe, I'm still to this day, I don't know if it's a France-inspired world or if it's actually France, but they have the Vine Witch kind of followed a woman who makes wine, but she makes the wine through her magic, which that is her potency is to kind of make the wine grow and to be the best thing that she can ever make. And she ends up kind of being kicked out of that position and hunted down and tried for a crime that she did not commit. So that is the book 1. Book 2 does pick up where book 1 left off, so they are a direct series, and The Conjurer is going to finish off the series. And I've just really liked this book. It's very character driven. The writing, the best way I would describe it is slow. You kind of it's almost like in a honey dream, I would imagine. You're just wading through it, and it's slow, but it's very beautiful. It's not something that I can read through fast, and I can't really devour the book, but I really enjoy my time reading all the series so far. So I'm excited for that one. On February 2nd, we have The Project by Courtney Summers coming out. I have only read one other book by Courtney Summers, and it was one of my favorite books of all time and of 2018, and that was Sadie by Courtney Summers. Sadie was a kind of a thriller, I don't even know if it's not really a thriller, but it was kind of a thriller, I think, a thriller contemporary, where you were following a girl who was going to seek revenge for her sister who went missing. So you're following Sadie's journey, but you're also following a podcast that is like a year later trying to figure out the mystery of the two girls that disappeared. So it was just so well done, and the audiobook was phenomenal. So I'm really excited to read The Project, because The Project is about one of my other favorite topics, which is cults. And I don't know why cults are so fascinating. I think it's just the psychology part of me where I can understand how cults are so potent, because they offer you what you're missing or you think you're missing in your life. And I just love that kind of like any kind of entertainment, whether it's a movie, real life, fiction, books, whatever. So I'm sold. I don't want to know anything else about the book. I'm going into it blind other than it's about cults. But I am also considering if I should pre-order the hardcover or if I should actually just pre-order the audiobook, because I think the format is very similar to how Sadie was, and the Sadie audiobook was just so well done. One of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to in my entire life. And I'm hoping that The Project's also going to be the same way. So we'll see what format I end up picking it up in, but I'm definitely going to pick this book up. On February 16th, we have, because it would never be complete without this author popping up on a list, even though I have a love-hate relationship with her, and that is A Court of Silver Flame by Sarah J. Maas. This is the continuation of the Court in Thorns and Roses series that follows Cassian and Nesta. I don't know much about what the plot is going to be other than it follows those two characters. They were two of my favorite characters in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I'm excited. I really did like that series. I enjoyed it for what it was. I'm just nervous because I feel like I hope that Sarah J. Maas has grown as an author and doesn't give me the same storyline with just new characters, because I feel like sometimes she regurgitates plots a little bit, or elements, I should say, maybe not plots. So I'm hoping that there is some new development for these characters and that we really get to enjoy what they're going to offer, because Nesta is a tough lady, and I don't think Sarah has written something like her as a main character yet. A lot of her, like I think Selena and Feyre are very similar as far as main characters go. So if she keeps Nesta the way she had her as a side character, I think it could be my favorite book from her at this point. So, anywho, we're going to say we're excited for this book. Then moving into March, on March 16th, we have The Queen of Gilded Horns by Amanda Joy. This is the sequel to A River of Royal Blood, which I read last year, also was in my top picks for the year. And I was just so impressed by this debut. The book followed a girl who was going to be in a competition with her older sister, and that competition was to complete a task in order to get the throne. However, part of the issue was that the main character was supposed to use her magic and she didn't think she had any, so she goes on her own quest to try to obtain magic so that she can secure the throne. And it is a wonderful ride with a little bit of romance in there, and I really love the lore. I love that there's all these different types of creatures, so it's not just humans like magic users, but there's other creatures as well. And it's just very interesting to see how they all interact and what secrets lie in the family that we're following. I'm really excited. I may have to brush up on book one just because it has been a while since I've read it, but needless to say, I'm excited. We're gonna get the second book. And on March 30th, we have another anticipated, well, obviously they're all anticipated, but another hugely anticipated, which is The Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second in the Nikolai duology, and if you're unfamiliar, this series that Leigh Bardugo is doing currently takes place after her first two books in the Grishaverse, which is the Shadow and Bone series and the Six of Crows duology. So it follows the events of both of those books. So if you are going to read this series, you need to read the trilogy and the duology before you get to this series. And unfortunately, that is a lot of books. So if you're excited, I can't really tell you much about this series. So just bear with me. It basically follows three characters, two characters who were in the first series and one character that was in the second series. And you're following their aftermath and how they are going on these own personal journeys to discover not only themselves, but to really help restore the balance that their world kind of lost when the Great War that happened in book one occurred. So I think that's probably the best way to describe it without giving away more. But there's magic, there's a little bit of romance, there's a lot of interesting stuff in this series. I was not wholly impressed with the first book. Something major happened, which is a spoiler, that I was not anticipating and I did not like. So I'm wondering where the book is going to go for book 2, and I really hope it's redeemed, because I just felt like it just was not what I wanted. Also, a couple of like the characters seem to have nothing to do with each other so far, and I would really like to see if their plots are actually going to intersect, because otherwise it just seems like they should have been 2 separate books if they don't. So that's what I'm hoping for, and I really do hope that I end up liking the series after I read book 2. On April 20th, we have Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. I will say that this is her name. I'm pretty sure it's Shannon. It's Ciannon. So if anyone, if it's not Shannon, please correct me, because I think it's one of those names that can easily be mispronounced, but I think I'm right. So this book is about witches. It is Jamaican inspired, and it follows 2 different witches who are kind of making an alliance to seek their revenge on the people who have hurt them in the past. And I'm here for it. I was trying to get an arc of this. Did not go anywhere, unfortunately, for me, but I'm okay to wait. I am really excited for it. The cover is beautiful. I just think I don't think I've read any Jamaican inspired stories, fantasy or not, so I'm excited to kind of step into that culture a little bit and just learn about these badass witches that they look like on the cover. So, because we know around here, I love my witch stories so much. On May 11th, Illusionary by Zoraida Cordova comes out. This is the sequel to Incendiary, which is it's called the Hollow Crown series. I believe there's going to be 3 books in total. And the first one is a book that there's, again, different sectors of magic, and the magic users are trying to reclaim what is theirs because the kingdom is oppressing them and stealing their magic. So book 2, I'm assuming, leads off right where book 1 ended, which kind of left off on a pretty big cliffhanger. So I'm hoping that I will be able to jump in. And honestly, book 1, I liked the story, but I think I expected a little bit more. So I am hoping that book 2 gives me that little bit more that I want. On June 15th, we have Blood Like Magic by LaSalle Sandberry. I'm really excited for this. LaSalle is a fellow author tuber on the platform and is traditionally published. She made a witch story because, again, anything about witches excites me. And also it's set in Canada, which I feel like a lot of people, we just don't see any fantasy stories anywhere, I think, set in Canada. I don't think I've read one. But LaSalle is a Canadian herself, so I think that's just kind of exciting to see a different culture again in a different location, because I live in the United States. Basically, in this book, you are following a witch who is supposed to go through her trial in order to grow into her powers, but she kind of refuses. And when she's given a second chance, her task is to kill her first love, which she's not really okay with. So that kind of leads her on a journey of trying to figure out how to either get out of this task or to succeed in it. And it just sounds great, and I'm excited, and I love witches, guys. There's a theme. There's a lot of witch books that are coming out next year, and I am here for it. I'm here for them all. In a different direction, on June 22nd, we have My Contrary Mary by what were formerly known as the Lady Janies, and I'm not sure if they're going to change their name now that they have a new series, but it's Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. I've previously talked about them on my channel because they did the Lady Janie series, which was, the last book I read was My Calamity Jane. This time they are going into a new style and going with Marys, and My Contrary Mary follows Mary, Queen of Scots, which is one of my favorite time periods to read about. I'm fascinated with Mary, and I think if their book is very similar to how My Lady Jane was, then I think I'm going to absolutely adore this book, because My Lady Jane had that perfect balance of like the time period history and some fun laugh out loud moments, and I'm really excited. So after the little bit of a disappointment with My Calamity Jane, I'm really hoping that My Contrary Mary comes through, because that's exactly what I need in my life, especially during the summer when you want like a nice beach read or to sit out in the sun and just enjoy yourself, that's what I'm looking for. On July 6th, we have The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. This is the sequel to A Deadly Education, which I very recently read and absolutely adored. I gave it 5 stars. I want the sequel tomorrow. I was so excited. This book series, the book itself, book 1, was so well done. And I think it's just tailored. If you grew up reading Harry Potter and now you're an adult, this series is for you. 100%, hands down. It is the adult Harry Potter. And with a little twist of like a sarcastic lead. So if, you know how Harry was a little bit like a whiny brat sometimes throughout the series as he was getting older? Well, instead of being the whiny brat, you have like the sarcastic asshole main character. And I love her. Well, I just really love the world. I love the premise. It is like set in a magical school and the school is trying to kill them. So the sequel is going to take place for their senior year. In the first book, they're juniors. The next book, they're going into their senior year. And again, this is another book that left off with a cliffhanger that was getting together. It was intense and I was not expecting it. So I need the second book. That is all. On July 6th, I really, 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 really hope this book is going to come out because it's Rain by Cora Carmack. And I absolutely adore this series so much. This is the third and final book to the Roar series, the Stormheart series, I'm sorry. Roar was the first one, followed by Rage, and now Rain is the final one. And in this series, you are following a girl who is a princess who is supposed to inherit the throne. On the night of a party where she meets the prince that she is destined to marry in order to unite their kingdoms, she ends up deciding that she is going to run away because she has no magic. And the family she's marrying into believes she is a very powerful magic user. And in this world, magic comes by the form of natural phenomenon. So hurricanes, twisters, lightning, anything that is like kind of deadly and in nature probably has a storm heart. And the main character, Aurora, ends up going into a group of storm hunters. They go chase the storms and capture their hearts because that is where the magic is and they can sell it for a lot in the black market. And she goes on an adventure. I think this story is absolutely beautiful. Cora Carmack, I never read anything else from her, and this is her first fantasy series. She wrote primarily young adult and new adult romance before this, so there's definitely still romance in the fantasy series, but like it is the best type of romance. And I think she captures it really, really well for that because it is the perfect balance of that fantasy, especially a high fantasy aspect, where the love story is really well written as well. So I'm obsessed with it. Unfortunately, the author does have some medical issues, so this book has been delayed, I think, for 2 years. It's been quite some time, and I'm just so excited because they finalized the release date again, and I'm hoping that it actually happens because I've been waiting for so long. On August 3rd, we have another witchy story because, again, guys, I'm not even kidding you. There's so many witch and wizard stories in this list, but it is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I've never read Victoria Lee, but this book was literally right up my alley. I was told it was dark academia, sapphic love, and well, I mean, what else? What else do we need? I'm obsessed already. I'm extremely excited for like the whole sapphic love meets dark academia vibe, and it is following 2 witches, I believe, in a boarding school, and they are trying to figure out and solve like a puzzle in order to, I don't know if it's save themselves, save humanity, find themselves, whatever. I don't care. I'm sold. That's all I care about. Victoria Lee has some really, really great reels on Instagram where she talks about her book. And she's great. I can fangirl a little bit. I'm running out of breath because of how excited I am. And some of her reels are just really like, if marketing was going that way, and I'm sure it is, she's doing great at it. I would suggest you go check her out on Instagram, especially if you want to see her new book as well as some of her past books. And I do own her first series, which is The Fever King was her first book. It's a duology. I own it. If you read it, let me know. Maybe I will read that while I'm waiting for A Lesson in Vengeance. On August 3rd, we have Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahurin, and this is the third and final book to the Serpent and Dove series. I read Serpent and Dove, and it was pretty much my favorite book of last year. I have yet to read Blood and Honey, which is the second book, but it's on my deep TBR list. I will get to it within the next month or two. I've been trying to consume all the books this month, and it's been going, but there's a lot on my list. Anyway, this is the third book. This series follows a witch and a witch hunter who, by circumstance, end up getting married to each other, and the witch has not told the witch hunter that she is a witch, and so it's a marriage of convenience as well as an enemies to lovers story, and I just had a lot of fun with the book. I loved the France-inspired world. I loved the relationship. I like that the main character is a little bit snarky, but she's snarky to protect herself, so it was a good time. And as I said, I am going to read book 2, so by the time book 3 comes out, I should be ready for it. And then the final book on this list that has an actual publication date is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, which comes out on September 16th. I know nothing about this book other than it's like an 800-page novel about vampires. I've never read Jay Kristoff before. I just really love vampires, and looking at the dude, he looks like the best guy to write a vampire story, so I'm hoping it delivers. I'm dead serious. That's my review of this. I have nothing else to offer. Go look it up on Goodreads if you want. I'm just here for the vampire novels. But in all reality, I also follow Jay Kristoff on Instagram, and sometimes he'll post things about the book, and I just get really excited. Social media is such a good way to get people pumped because they can literally know nothing about your book and yet thirst after it. So this is what I'm learning this year, is that I'm simple. You throw a few keywords in there and I'm interested in your book. That's all. Now, the last 2 books that I'm just going to mention are, again, sequels. They're both direct sequels, and it's the second book in the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo and the second book in the Court of Miracles by Kester Grant. Both don't have covers. Both don't have titles. They're just the sequels. So we don't really know anything about it, but both of those books I read last year. Court of Miracles was one of my favorite books of this year. Wow, spoiler alert, guys. So apparently you can already guess what some of my favorite books might be on my top list of 2020, but I was absolutely obsessed with Court of Miracles. It was so well written. It was like the perfect balance of dark but heart-wrenching and heartwarming, and it was such a good adventure, and it was a Les Miserables retelling from the character Eponine's point of view, but a kind of twist where she loses her sister, and in order to get her back, she joins an underground guild, and that's the Thieves Guild. So she becomes a thief in order to try to get her sister back, and it was just so good. It was so good. So I'm excited. And then Alex Stern, the first book was Ninth House, and that followed a woman who was put into Harvard because she has the ability to see ghosts, and in Harvard they have all these secret societies, and these secret societies deal with the otherworldly beings, and her job was kind of to shout if there was anything weird with the Greys, which are ghosts on campus. And because of that, she ends up getting into some tricky situations, and a lot of stuff happens, and it was a good book. I listened to it on audio. I actually really recommend the audiobook. It was really good, especially because the beginning of the book, you're kind of thrown into the world, and it's not info dumpy, but it's hard to kind of adjust. So listening to the audiobook for me helped me kind of get into that world and feel like I was connected to the story. I do own both the audio and the hardcover, but I mean, whatever your preference is. I'm excited for book 2. Hopefully it will come out next year, but with Leigh Bardugo having a book coming out, which was The Rule of Wolves on this list as well, I don't know if it actually will come out next year, so we'll see. And that's it. There you have it. We have all the books that I'm anticipating for next year. I was actually kind of surprised that all the books I'm excited for go up until September. So I have no fall and winter novels that are coming out, so I'm hoping to see if that changes, just because it's always nice to look forward to some books throughout the year. But I am gonna leave it at that. If you guys know any of these books, let me know if you're also excited for them. If not, let me know down below what books you're excited for if they aren't on this list. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.